My baby is still in there." The scream tore through the lobby like a lightning strike, stopping conversations, freezing footsteps, and turning every head toward the bank of elevators at the center of the building. For one impossible moment, time seemed to hesitate. The polished marble floors reflected flashing emergency lights. A warning alarm pulsed through the air in sharp, steady bursts. Somewhere above, hidden behind steel doors and concrete walls, a frightened little boy was trapped inside an elevator that had suddenly stopped between floors. Emily Harper stood alone in the middle of the chaos. Her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. One trembling hand pressed against the elevator door, while the other wiped away tears she refused to let fall. At 32 years old, Emily had survived things most people never saw. She had survived the end of a marriage that left her raising a child alone. She had survived overdue bills, sleepless nights, and the crushing weight of responsibility that came with being both mother and father to a 6-year-old boy named Noah. But nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing had prepared her for hearing her son's frightened voice echo through a steel door she couldn't open. "Mom," came the tiny voice from inside. "Mom, it's dark." The words hit harder than any crisis she had ever faced. Emily leaned closer to the narrow gap between the elevator doors. "I'm here, sweetheart," she called back, forcing calm into her voice. "I'm right here." Around her, people gathered in cautious circles. Office workers, visitors, security personnel. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. Everyone seemed to have advice. But no one had a solution. The elevator had stopped unexpectedly during a brief electrical malfunction. Building maintenance had been called. Emergency services were on their way. Yet every second felt like an hour. Every minute stretched into an eternity. Emily's eyes never left the doors. Noah had always been afraid of small spaces. Ever since he was 4 years old, he hated being locked in anywhere. Closets, tiny rooms, even crowded cars sometimes made him nervous. She knew exactly what he was feeling, and that knowledge made her heartache. The lobby itself looked like something out of a luxury magazine. 20-foot glass walls overlooked downtown Chicago. Modern chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. Executives moved through these halls every day discussing million-dollar deals and corporate strategy. But at that moment, none of the wealth surrounding them mattered. None of the prestige mattered. The only thing that mattered was a little boy trapped behind a metal door and a mother willing to do anything to reach him. "Mom, are you still there?" Noah called again. Emily pressed her palm against the elevator. "Always," she answered instantly. "I'm not going anywhere." The words carried more meaning than anyone around her realized. Because Emily Harper never went anywhere when life got hard. She stayed. She fought. She endured. That was who she was. 3 years earlier, after her husband walked away, friends told her she couldn't do it alone. Family members quietly questioned whether she could handle everything. Yet somehow she had. Every morning before sunrise, she packed lunches. Every evening, she helped with homework. Every weekend, she worked extra hours to keep their small apartment running. She wasn't extraordinary because she never claimed to be. She was extraordinary because she kept showing up. Now she stared at the elevator panel, desperately searching for anything she could do. The alarms continued flashing. Security officers exchanged nervous looks. Someone spoke into a radio. Another person checked a maintenance tablet. Yet the uncertainty remained. Then something changed. The crowd near the building entrance suddenly shifted. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. The atmosphere itself seemed to tighten. Emily barely noticed at first. Her focus remained fixed on Noah. But others noticed immediately. A tall man in a dark navy suit stepped through the revolving doors with the calm confidence of someone accustomed to solving impossible problems. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't panicking. Yet somehow the energy around him changed the moment he arrived. Employees straightened their posture. Security staff moved aside. Managers appeared almost instantly. His name was Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Pierce Global Holdings, one of the most influential business leaders in America. And as his eyes landed on the flashing emergency lights, the stalled elevator, and the exhausted single mother standing alone in front of it, something behind his composed expression shifted. Because in less than a minute, Jonathan Pierce would discover that this wasn't just another problem waiting to be managed. It was a moment that would change far more than anyone in that lobby could possibly imagine. Emily Harper's hands shook slightly as she pressed her ear against the elevator door, listening to the faint sound of Noah's breathing. Each second stretched into an eternity. The emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across the marble floors, and the distant hum of the city outside the glass walls seemed to vanish into the tense silence. Around her, office employees and visitors lingered, unsure whether to intervene or stay back, their faces a mix of concern and hesitation. Emily's mind raced. She thought about the small things she had taught Noah about staying calm, how to count quietly, how to focus on something familiar to keep fear at bay. "Mom, I am scared," Noah whispered through the metal gap. "I know, sweetie. I know," Emily whispered back, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. She crouched slightly, as if making herself smaller, drawing strength from the ground beneath her feet. Emily's gaze flicked to Jonathan Pierce, standing at the edge of the crowd. His posture was calm, almost statuesque, and his eyes measured the situation with quiet precision. There was no rush in his movements, yet every detail of the unfolding scene seemed captured by his observation. Jonathan knelt slightly, placing one hand gently on the shoulder of a security guard, signaling patience while assessing the problem. Emily had never seen anyone command attention without raising their voice, and for a fleeting moment, she realized the weight of presence, the kind that influenced without speaking. Jonathan's eyes met hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, not patronizing but resolute. Emily knew instinctively that he would act decisively when the right moment came, but for now, it was her responsibility to keep Noah calm. She whispered softly, "Focus on your favorite story, Noah. Remember the one about the little kite?" A small pause, then a quiet giggle through the steel doors. Emily felt a small surge of relief. The boy was responding to her calm, his tiny heart beginning to mirror hers. She took a deep breath, recalling the mornings spent teaching him to read the clock, the evenings of story time, the weekends at the park when she had promised that even when life felt impossible, they could always find a way forward. That memory became her anchor now. She glanced at Jonathan again. He was reviewing the elevator control panel from the outside with the building maintenance team, but he made no sudden moves, only offered guidance in subtle gestures, his presence creating a rhythm of confidence. Emily adjusted her stance, fingers lightly brushing against the smooth metal, memorizing the vibrations, listening for any sound that could hint at movement. The crowd had grown silent, sensing the unspoken tension. Every flash of light and beep from the alarm system seemed amplified, each echo bouncing off the glass walls. Emily whispered, "I am right here. You are safe. I promise." The reassurance sounded small, almost fragile, but it carried weight through the space between mother and child. Jonathan finally moved, stepping closer to the elevator, and Emily could feel the subtle shift in the energy around her. His voice, calm and measured, addressed both Emily and the small gathering of onlookers. "Step back, give her space. We will handle this." The words were simple but authoritative, instantly organizing the chaos without raising a hand. Emily exhaled, letting herself feel the slight ease in her shoulders, but never letting her focus drift from Noah. In that moment, the balance between fear and hope was delicate, and Emily Harper understood how fragile it could be. She spoke quietly to herself, reinforcing her own courage, the countless nights she had spent preparing for life's uncertainties, the endless patience she had cultivated as a single mother. Her connection to her son, their shared resilience, and the silent support of Jonathan Pierce created a rhythm that seemed to stretch time, slowing it just enough to make each decision meaningful. Every glance, every measured movement, every whispered word became part of a larger orchestration, a delicate dance between human determination and quiet leadership. Emily felt a tiny hand tapping against her fingers through the crack of the elevator doors, and she smiled, whispering, "I see you, Noah. Keep breathing with me." The acknowledgement, the trust, and the shared courage formed a bridge that reached beyond the metal and lights, carrying the promise that neither fear nor uncertainty could break. Around them, the crowd held its breath, watching the unfolding scene, sensing that what happened next would not only solve a problem, but also reveal the strength of a mother, the composure of a leader, and the unspoken bond that could transform an impossible moment into a testament of resilience and human connection. For the first time since the alarm had started, the sharp beeping stopped. The sudden silence felt almost louder than the noise that had come before it. Every person in the lobby seemed to notice. Heads turned toward the maintenance panel beside the elevator shaft as one of the building engineers adjusted a series of controls. A small green light flickered. Then another. Emily Harper immediately straightened. Her pulse quickened. Hope was a dangerous thing in moments like this. It could lift you up just as easily as it could break your heart. She kept one hand against the elevator door. "Noah," she called softly. "I am here, Mom," came the answer. His voice sounded steadier now. Still nervous. Still uncertain. But steadier. Emily smiled despite the tension tightening every muscle in her body. Across the lobby, Jonathan Pierce remained focused on the engineers. He listened carefully as they explained the electrical interruption that had caused the shutdown. Several building executives had quietly gathered nearby, waiting for instructions. Yet Jonathan never looked at them. His attention stayed on the elevator and the mother standing beside it. That alone surprised many people. Most executives in his position would have delegated the problem and walked away. Jonathan did neither. He stayed. He watched. He listened. And somehow that mattered. Emily did not know much about Jonathan Pierce beyond the name. Everyone in Chicago knew the name. Financial magazines featured him on their covers. Business channels analyzed his decisions. His company occupied half the upper floors of the tower. But standing 20 feet away from him now, Emily saw something none of those headlines ever captured. He was paying attention, not to the situation, to the people inside it. "How old is your son?" Jonathan asked quietly as he approached. The question caught Emily off guard. "6," she answered. "He turned 6 in April." Jonathan nodded. "That is a brave age." Emily almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt unexpectedly true. 6-year-olds believe they could conquer the world one moment and become terrified of the dark the next. Jonathan glanced toward the elevator doors. "He trusts you." Emily swallowed hard. "I hope so." "No," Jonathan said calmly. "He does." The words landed differently than she expected. Emily had spent years questioning every decision she made. Every parent did. Every single mother especially. Was she working too much? Was she giving enough? Was she failing in ways she could not see? The questions never stopped. Yet hearing a stranger say those words felt strangely reassuring. Before she could respond, one of the engineers hurried over. "We have partial power," he reported. "We are getting movement readings now." Every conversation stopped instantly. Emily's heart nearly jumped into her throat. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means we know exactly where the elevator is positioned," the engineer explained. "And we may be able to move it safely." Emily closed her eyes briefly. Relief washed through her so suddenly that she almost lost her balance. Beside her, Jonathan immediately shifted into action. Not dramatic action. Not loud action. Focused action. Questions. Measurements. Timelines. Solutions. He spoke with quiet authority, organizing information faster than anyone else in the room. The uncertainty that had dominated the lobby began giving way to direction. Emily watched him work and finally understood why thousands of employees followed his leadership. It was not because he was the loudest person in the room. It was because he made difficult situations feel manageable. Then a faint sound echoed from inside the shaft. Metal moving. Small. Controlled. But unmistakable. The crowd collectively held its breath. Emily stepped closer to the door. "Noah," she called. "I felt something move," he answered. "Is that good?" Tears filled Emily's eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered. "That is very good." For the first time since this nightmare had begun, she truly believed they were getting closer. Not just to solving the problem, to ending it. And as the elevator slowly responded to the restoration efforts, neither Emily nor Jonathan realized that the next few minutes would reveal far more than anyone expected, not about machinery, not about business, but about the extraordinary strength hidden inside ordinary people when fear gives way to hope. The first real movement came with a soft mechanical hum that rolled through the elevator shaft like distant thunder. It was not dramatic. It was not fast, but it was enough. The digital display above the doors flickered for the first time since the emergency began. A collective breath swept through the lobby. Emily Harper stared upward, afraid to blink, afraid that hope itself might somehow interrupt the progress. Beside her, Jonathan Pierce remained composed, but even he could see the shift happening around them. Fear was slowly losing ground. Confidence was returning. The engineers continued monitoring their equipment while maintenance crews exchanged cautious nods. Progress. Small but real. Emily pressed her fingertips lightly against the cool metal door. "Noah, can you hear me?" she asked. "Yes, Mom," came the answer almost immediately. His voice sounded stronger now. "I think it moved." Emily smiled. It did. A tiny laugh came from inside the elevator. The sound nearly brought tears to her eyes. Throughout the ordeal, she had fought to remain steady, not for herself but for him. Children borrowed courage from the adults they trusted. She knew that. If she broke down, Noah would feel it instantly. So she stayed strong. Not because she was fearless, but because motherhood rarely gave her another option. Jonathan observed the exchange quietly. Something about it reminded him of his own childhood. His father had worked long hours. His mother had held everything together. School events, doctor appointments, difficult days. Somehow she had managed all of it while making it look effortless. Only later did he understand how much strength it required. Looking at Emily now, he recognized that same quiet determination. No audience, no recognition, no reward, just responsibility carried with grace. A few feet away, several employees whispered among themselves. Many had never seen Jonathan remain at a situation like this for so long. Meetings had been delayed. Calls had been postponed. Yet he had not once checked his watch. The building manager approached cautiously. "Mr. Pierce, your board meeting is waiting upstairs." Jonathan glanced toward him briefly. "Then they can continue waiting." The manager nodded and stepped back. Emily overheard the exchange. She looked at Jonathan with surprise. "You do not have to stay," she said softly. Jonathan looked toward the elevator doors. "I know." The simple answer carried unexpected weight. Emily did not know what to say. For a moment they stood in silence, united by concern for the same little boy. Then another sound emerged from the shaft. Stronger this time. The elevator had begun responding more consistently to the restored power system. Engineers moved closer to their monitors. One technician smiled for the first time all afternoon. "We are getting there," he said. "A little more." Emily felt her heartbeat quicken again. Every emotion seemed amplified. Relief, anxiety, hope, gratitude. They blended together until she could barely separate one from another. Through the narrow opening between the doors, Noah suddenly spoke again. "Mom, I am here. When I get out, can we still get ice cream?" Several people nearby smiled. Emily laughed softly through tears. "Absolutely. Chocolate. Extra chocolate." Noah seemed satisfied by the answer. The crowd relaxed. Slightly. Even Jonathan allowed himself a small smile. It was amazing how a child could shift the atmosphere of an entire room with a single question. Then one of the engineers raised his voice. "Everyone stand clear." Instantly, the tension returned. Emily stepped back as instructed, her eyes locked on the doors. The machinery hummed again. The display numbers flashed. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the elevator began moving toward the nearest floor. A murmur swept through the lobby. Emily clasped her hands together. Jonathan stood beside her now, not as a billionaire executive, not as the owner of the building, but simply as another person hoping for a safe outcome. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. Then finally the digital display stopped. The elevator had reached a position close enough for emergency access. One engineer looked up from his equipment and smiled broadly. "We have it." For the first time since the nightmare began, applause broke out across the lobby. Yet Emily barely heard it. Her entire world focused on one thing. In just a few moments, she would see her son again. And neither she nor Jonathan realized that what happened after those doors opened would create a connection neither of them expected, one that would continue long after the emergency itself was over. The elevator doors began to slide open with a smooth, mechanical precision that carried a sense of inevitability. Emily Harper's breath caught in her throat as she leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving the small gap where her son's face would appear. The first glimpse of Noah made her chest swell with relief and awe. His wide eyes met hers, and a small smile tugged at his lips despite the tension still lingering in the air. Emily quickly stepped back to give space as the boy stepped out, supported lightly by the emergency responders, and she wrapped her arms around him in a careful, protective embrace. His laughter, soft and shaky, filled the lobby, echoing off the glass walls and polished floors, and it was the kind of sound that made the minutes of fear melt away almost instantly. Jonathan Pierce remained nearby, observing quietly, his sharp gray eyes softening as he watched the reunion. He had seen many moments of success, many victories in boardrooms and negotiations, but the raw, unfiltered connection between a parent and child, filled with fear, relief, and love, was something that no financial achievement could replicate. Emily pulled Noah close, whispering reassurances while gently brushing the hair from his forehead, and he clung to her as if his very safety depended on her presence. Around them, the crowd seemed to exhale collectively. Some held their phones still, capturing the scene, but mostly, people were simply watching, moved by the unspoken display of courage and care. Jonathan stepped forward, offering a calm hand to Emily, not in a gesture of authority, but as someone acknowledging her strength and resilience. "You handled that exceptionally," he said softly. Emily looked up, her eyes shining, a mix of exhaustion and pride. "We did it together," she replied. The words hung in the air, resonating with everyone nearby. Jonathan nodded, recognizing the collaborative effort it had taken, the courage required to face an uncertain, frightening situation without yielding to panic. Emily glanced at Noah, who was now holding her hand and slowly regaining his composure. She could see the confidence returning in his posture, the way he walked slightly taller, the way his eyes were alert and curious again. That small transformation, from fear to reassurance, from chaos to calm, was as significant as any achievement in a corporate office or city council chamber. Jonathan subtly guided the emergency personnel through the final safety checks, ensuring that the elevator was secure, that the system was stable, and that Noah and Emily could move freely. His demeanor remained composed, but there was a warmth in his attention, an acknowledgement that sometimes leadership meant standing still, observing, and supporting those who had been the first to act with bravery. Emily felt her heartbeat slow, her body releasing the tension that had built over what felt like an eternity. The adrenaline still coursed through her veins, but it was tempered by relief, by the presence of someone who understood the gravity of the situation without diminishing her own efforts. Noah looked up at her, eyes bright and trusting, and Emily knew that this moment would stay with both of them forever, a testament to courage, teamwork, and the quiet power that ordinary people hold when confronted with extraordinary circumstances. Jonathan stepped back slightly, allowing mother and child their space, his presence still a steady anchor in the room, a reminder that guidance and support often came not through commands, but through observation, calm authority, and the decision to act thoughtfully at precisely the right moment. The lobby remained charged with a subtle energy, a combination of relief, admiration, and quiet inspiration, as Emily held Noah close and finally allowed herself a small, tired smile. Every flicker of light, every hum of machinery, every whispered word of comfort had led to this moment of human connection and triumph, where fear was replaced by hope, and uncertainty was replaced by a tangible sense of security that would linger long after the doors had fully closed and the city resumed its usual rhythm. Emily Harper held Noah close, her heartbeat gradually slowing as the immediate fear gave way to a trembling relief that coursed through every fiber of her body. She glanced at Jonathan Pierce, who stood a few feet away with a subtle, approving nod, his presence calm and measured, yet undeniably commanding. There was a quiet understanding between them now, forged through tension, observation, and shared concern for the boy. The engineers continued their work, ensuring that the elevator was fully operational and safe for continued use, and each small adjustment brought incremental progress that everyone in the lobby absorbed with rapt attention. Emily's gaze remained locked on her son, noticing how the ordeal had awakened a cautious curiosity in him, the way he clutched her hand yet peeked cautiously at the surroundings, exploring the lobby with eyes wide open, taking in the glass walls, polished floors, and the streaming sunlight from the tall windows above. Jonathan observed them with careful attention, recognizing the subtle balance between fear and confidence that Emily had nurtured in her child. He had witnessed many emergencies in his life, but rarely had he seen a parent display such a composed blend of instinct and calm determination. The crowd of onlookers, who had initially formed a tense semicircle, began to relax as the situation stabilized. Phones lowered, whispers quieted, and the collective focus shifted from anxiety to admiration. People watched as Emily guided Noah toward the nearby seating area, her steps cautious but steady, ensuring he felt supported with every move. Jonathan took a step closer, offering to assist if needed, yet Emily politely declined, demonstrating the quiet authority she maintained over her own child and the situation at hand. The sounds of the city beyond the lobby returned, mingling with the gentle chatter of relieved witnesses and the occasional click of a camera capturing the moment. Emily's thoughts flickered briefly to the weeks and months of preparation she had unknowingly done to cultivate resilience in her son, the countless stories, the gentle guidance, the patient reassurances that had built his courage over time. She realized, in a fleeting moment of clarity, that this shared experience had deepened their bond in ways words could not convey. Jonathan Pierce moved methodically among the building staff and emergency responders, ensuring that every procedure was followed to maintain safety and that any lingering risk had been mitigated. His leadership style, precise and thoughtful, encouraged trust without overt assertion, allowing Emily to feel empowered rather than overshadowed. She noticed the subtle glances of reassurance he offered her and felt an unexpected sense of gratitude for his composed intervention. Noah began to speak more confidently, his voice carrying excitement tempered by a recent experience of fear, and Emily responded with gentle praise, reinforcing his courage while quietly acknowledging her own. The lobby, once a scene of tension and panic, now radiated a calm energy infused with relief and admiration. Every polished surface, every reflection in the glass walls, seemed to amplify the significance of the moment, transforming it from a simple rescue into a demonstration of human patience, careful leadership, and maternal strength. Emily allowed herself to exhale fully, feeling the adrenaline ebb and the warmth of security settle over them. Jonathan observed the interaction with quiet approval, understanding that the most critical elements of this event had been shaped not by directives or authority alone, but by the steady presence, empathy, and unspoken communication between a mother and her child. As Noah clung to her hand, smiling tentatively, Emily realized the enduring impact of the experience, a profound acknowledgement that courage, calm, and careful guidance could transform fear into trust, uncertainty into clarity, and a potentially frightening situation into a testament of resilience, connection, and human grace. The moment lingered, unhurried, as the lobby gradually returned to its normal rhythm. Yet Emily and Noah carried with them the quiet assurance that they had navigated the challenge together, supported by both instinct and the thoughtful intervention of a calm, capable observer whose presence had quietly altered the course of the day for the better. Nearly an hour had passed since the emergency ended, yet the atmosphere inside the lobby still carried traces of what had happened. Employees returning from delayed meetings found themselves discussing the same scene. Visitors who had witnessed the event lingered longer than necessary. Even the building staff seemed to move with a different energy. Some moments disappeared as quickly as they arrived. Others settled into memory before people even realized it. This was one of those moments. Emily Harper sat with Noah near the large windows overlooking downtown Chicago. The afternoon sunlight painted soft reflections across the polished floor. Noah had finally relaxed enough to enjoy the chocolate ice cream someone from the building cafe had brought him. A streak of chocolate rested near the corner of his smile. Emily laughed softly as she wiped it away with a napkin. For the first time all day, she felt normal again. Not completely, but enough. Noah looked up at her. "Mom, yes, you were not scared." Emily almost smiled at the innocence of the statement. "Oh, sweetheart," she said gently. "I was very scared." Noah frowned. "You did not look scared." Emily paused. Sometimes children asked questions that adults spent years trying to answer. "Being brave does not mean you are not scared," she said. "It means you keep going even when you are." Noah considered this carefully before nodding. Across the lobby, Jonathan Pierce happened to overhear the exchange while finishing a conversation with the engineering team. The words stopped him for a moment. Not because they were profound, because they were true. Simple truths often carried the greatest weight. As the engineers prepared their final reports, one younger employee approached Jonathan holding a tablet. "Sir, I think you should see this." Jonathan glanced down. A short video clip had already appeared online. Someone in the lobby had recorded portions of the emergency. The footage showed Emily kneeling beside the elevator doors, calmly reassuring Noah, while everyone else struggled to understand what was happening. The video was spreading rapidly. Thousands of views had become tens of thousands in less than an hour. Comments flooded the screen. People praised the mother's composure. Others admired the teamwork that had helped resolve the situation. Some focused on Jonathan's decision to stay rather than leave for his meeting. Jonathan handed the tablet back without comment. Numbers never impressed him by themselves. What caught his attention was something else entirely. Public attention had focused on him before, countless times. But this story belonged to someone else. It belonged to a mother who refused to let fear control her. A few minutes later, as Emily prepared to leave, she gathered Noah's backpack and stood from her chair. The exhausting weight of the day had finally begun catching up to her. She was ready to go home, ready to put Noah to bed early, ready to leave the entire experience behind. Ms. Harper. She turned. Jonathan Pierce was approaching. Emily straightened slightly. Mr. Pierce. Noah looked between them curiously. Jonathan smiled. I wanted to thank you. Emily blinked. Thank me. You reminded an entire building what real courage looks like. Emily immediately shook her head. I was just being his mother. Jonathan glanced toward Noah. Exactly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jonathan reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a business card. Simple. Elegant. No grand gesture. No dramatic speech. If you ever need anything, he said, call me. Emily looked at the card, then back at him. She had no idea what to say. People like Jonathan Pierce did not hand personal contact information to strangers. Yet his expression carried complete sincerity. Noah suddenly tugged at her sleeve. Mom, he whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Is he your friend now? Emily's face turned slightly red. Jonathan laughed. A genuine laugh. The kind few people in the building had ever heard. I hope so, he said. Noah grinned. And somehow that simple answer felt more valuable than any business deal waiting upstairs. By the following morning, the video had traveled far beyond the walls of the Chicago Tower. What began as a few seconds of footage recorded by a bystander had transformed into something much larger. News websites shared it. Social media accounts reposted it. Morning talk shows discussed it. Millions of people who had never met Emily Harper or Noah suddenly knew their names. Yet the reason the story resonated had very little to do with elevators, emergency procedures, or even the building itself. People saw something they recognized. A mother refusing to give up. A child finding courage through trust. A leader choosing presence over convenience. In a small apartment across the city, Emily sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone in disbelief. Notifications arrived faster than she could read them. Messages from old classmates, former coworkers, neighbors she barely knew, complete strangers. Some shared their own stories. Others simply thanked her. Emily never considered herself extraordinary. She worked hard. She paid bills. She packed lunches. She worried about the future. She did what millions of parents did every single day. Yet somehow the world had decided she represented something larger. Noah walked into the kitchen wearing superhero pajamas and carrying his favorite cereal bowl. Mom, he said excitedly. We are on television. Emily looked up. Sure enough, the small television mounted in the corner of the room displayed footage from the previous afternoon. Noah grinned proudly. Emily nearly laughed. Well, she said, that is something I never expected. Across town, Jonathan Pierce arrived at headquarters earlier than usual. The lobby of Pierce Global Holdings looked much different than it had 24 hours earlier. Employees smiled as he entered. Some congratulated him. Others mentioned the video. Jonathan thanked them politely, but remained thoughtful. The attention made him uncomfortable, because every headline seemed to focus on the billionaire who stayed behind. Very few captured what he believed mattered most. During a leadership meeting later that morning, one executive pulled up the video on a large conference screen. Public response has been overwhelmingly positive, she explained. People are calling it a masterclass in leadership. Jonathan remained silent for several seconds. Then he looked around the room. Leadership did not happen because I stayed, he said calmly. Leadership happened because a mother stayed calm while her child was afraid. The room fell quiet. Nobody disagreed. Later that afternoon, Jonathan found himself thinking about Emily again. Not because of the publicity, not because of the attention, because something about her resilience lingered in his mind. Most people underestimated quiet strength. They looked for confidence in titles, influence, and status. Yet Emily had demonstrated a different kind of strength entirely. The kind that appeared when nobody expected it. The kind built through sacrifice rather than recognition. Meanwhile, Emily's phone rang unexpectedly. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. She almost ignored it. Almost. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Ms. Harper," a cheerful voice replied. "My name is Karen Mitchell from Channel 7 News. We would love to invite you and Noah for an interview." Emily blinked. Before she could respond, another call came through. Then another. Local newspapers, radio programs, community organizations. Everyone wanted to hear her story. Emily stared out the kitchen window, overwhelmed. She never wanted fame. She never wanted attention. She simply wanted her son safe. Yet life had a strange way of turning ordinary moments into unexpected opportunities. That evening, as the sun dipped below the Chicago skyline, Jonathan stood alone in his office overlooking the city. Thousands of lights stretched toward the horizon. Somewhere among them was a small apartment where a mother was trying to return to normal life. Jonathan looked at the business card holder on his desk and thought about the promise he had made. "If you ever need anything, call me." At the time, they had sounded like simple words. He had no idea those words were about to become far more important than either of them could possibly imagine. Days later, Emily Harper sat at her small kitchen table with Noah drawing carefully on a sheet of paper, crayons scattered across the surface. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm patterns across the hardwood floor. Despite the normalcy of pancakes and cereal, a quiet sense of change lingered in the apartment. The events in the tower had rippled outward in ways Emily never anticipated. Emails and messages continued to arrive, not demanding attention but offering encouragement, gratitude, and shared stories of resilience from strangers. She noticed how her own confidence had shifted, how the ordeal had illuminated her ability to remain composed under pressure, and how that calm had guided her son through fear. Jonathan Pierce, sitting in his office across town, reflected on the same lessons. Leadership was often measured by decisions and authority, yet the simplest actions, the presence and calm of a mother, had taught more than any executive meeting could. Emily picked up Noah's drawing, a colorful depiction of an elevator surrounded by lights and smiling faces. She smiled at his interpretation, marveling at the innocence and perspective of a child who had experienced a frightening situation and had learned courage through trust. Jonathan's contact had been a small gesture, but it carried significance far beyond the business card. It was a reminder that empathy and understanding were as important as any decision in the boardroom. Emily had called once, just to thank him, and he had listened, offering quiet encouragement. Their connection was understated but meaningful, built on mutual respect and acknowledgement of the extraordinary ordinary. Later in the day, as Emily walked Noah to the park, the city felt both familiar and new. Every reflection of sunlight off the glass towers reminded her of the lobby where fear had been transformed into trust, where presence had made the difference. She watched her son run freely across the grass, laughing, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. She thought of the morning, the elevator doors, the calm presence that had guided her through the ordeal. Gratitude filled her quietly, the kind that does not need to be spoken aloud. Jonathan Pierce, in the same city but miles away, glanced out of his office window at the skyline, thinking of the ripple effects of his choice to stay, to observe, and to allow Emily's strength to lead. Sometimes the smallest acts, unnoticed at first, were the most transformative. Emily returned home that evening to a quiet apartment, Noah asleep in his bed, a soft light from the bedside lamp illuminating his peaceful face. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, reflecting on the extraordinary, ordinary moments that had unfolded. Courage had been shown, trust had been strengthened, and an unlikely connection had been formed between two people who, under different circumstances, might never have met. Emily Harper understood something fundamental now. Fear could be met with calm, panic could be met with patience, and leadership could be found in the simplest, most human acts. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, unaware of the quiet victories that had occurred, of the courage displayed in the elevator lobby, of the calm and presence that had shaped the day. Emily leaned back, allowing herself to feel the lasting change, a sense of confidence that was not loud or showy, but steady, internal, and enduring. The day had begun like any other, but it ended with a lesson carried forward. True strength is measured by how one remains present for others, how empathy guides action, and how even a single act of calm and care can resonate far beyond the moment it occurs. Noah stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly, and Emily smiled, feeling the quiet, persistent heartbeat of resilience and human connection that would remain with them forever.